Shias doing this and doing that in Europe. Who are we talking about? Surely we're not talking about individuals, are we? Who is directing this? I have personal experience myself seeing somebody inside the United Nations, Geneva, the Human Rights Council, of a member of the he calls himself an NGO, but he actually is part of the establishment in Iraq. And it's obvious that there is conversions to Shiism in places like Morocco and Egypt and Tunisia, and he's bringing them into there to say, oh, they're oppressed. There's Shias in Tunisia and they're oppressed. So that sort of alarmed me. And I'm sure, like you said, there are both sides. So who is actually directing all these things? Surely it's something we have to look into, because that will lead to social unrest for us here. The other question is for Mr. Clark. Two questions, please. One, what is the Iraqi government's interests in stirring up? I mean, we know they rely on sectarianism, but really to go that far into relying on those militias who act outside the law and create complete chaos, that actually undermines their control of the country. And the second thing is to do with Britain. Why is Britain considers popular mobilization as an important fighting force? As I don't know the select committee, the Defense Select Committee of years ago, November of 2014, I think it is. They have a report which they recognize as an important, even though there are no shortage of reports from Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch to say that they are committing war crimes.
There are always actors behind the screen. So it's more about the kin states. In case of Sunni radicalism, mostly we can refer to Saudi Arabia, and about the Shia we can refer to Iran, and both parties are igniting such incidents, and they are profiting from them. And the fact that Iran, I mean, I'm not accusing the Shia of being sectarian as such, but we have to look at the other side as well. So we can learn a lot about ISIS fighters infiltrating among migrants and coming to Europe, or mostly terrorism is and terror attacks are somehow linked to Sunni radicals. So what I wanted to point at is that we cannot identify one side with pure terrorism and radicalism while saying that by nature the other side is must be an ally of Western values. So I think in both sides there are these what I call these sectarian entrepreneurs who are profiting from the opportunity, and they are linked and paid by kin states. And obviously there is a huge network of institutions run by Iran. We can mention a couple of foundations like the Ahlul Bayt that created, I think, a huge disaster by posting this announcement on the website that I referred to, ending up people leaving from the UK to Iraq to fight. So I think it is institutionalized, and there are actors behind, and people, of course, who are emotional and kind of living in Europe, but their hearts and their minds are back home, are very easily manipulated. And what my point was, maybe just to add something to the to the presentation, that it makes the linkage to establish deep links to European values, to Western societies, makes it very, very difficult, because it's there would be a need for a complete change of mindset. Of course, I'm talking about Western values and so on, and I refer to the Croatian, Serbian tension, even living with us even today. So it is, it is a very difficult process, but definitely it hinders the adaptation of a new idea of citizenship and links and loyalties to the host societies. So this is my point.
Thanks. So the first question about what the Iraqi government's interests are in using or working with the Hashd, and which obviously per se that undermines their control of the country, because they're not wholly under the government's control. They're a paramilitary force, and therefore, of course, this erodes the ISF and other institutions of the state, but also it stirs up sectarianism, which also undermines the control over the country. I mean, I think the first thing to note is that the government was in a reactive role, because after Sistani issued his fatwa, people flocked to militias. So they had an initial reactive role, and I mean, you could argue charitably that they made the best of a bad case by at least managing to put the Hashd under the control of the Interior Minister. That argument maybe is on weaker ground when you consider that the Interior Minister, well, that at least there was this whole issue with Ameri going for the role and Raban getting the role, and so Iran ultimately having a say over how he does his job. But so the first thing I would argue is that they've been put in a reactive position, they have to react. And it's not necessarily that they wanted this to happen. If we think about Abadi, at least the government of and the Qadr of Abadi. The second thing is that, I mean, that alludes to my second point really, which is about the splits among the elite, this faction of Maliki, faction of Abadi, not even to mention the Sadrists and others. And so I think that I think the problem is just a focus on infighting. The stymied effective policy making. I mean, even if we talk about Iraqi control over the country, I don't know even what that, in a sense, what that means, because we can begin to look at the many myriad ways in which control has already been long eroded. And so, I think it's a really sad fact that the issue now has clear. I mean, war is a continuation of politics. It's not the other way around. So the politics that have led to the rise of ISIS have to be addressed, and they're not being addressed. This is like if we want like a political front to the war against ISIS, and certainly the PMF is making it worse. So I think that I can't think that the Iraqi government has any interest in that, but maybe it's just bureaucratic politics, internecine rivalry and feuding, leading to really, really poor policy making. Sorry. Thank you. The British government, why they consider the PMF as an important fighting force. I think the British government is just completely desperate for any potential, really in parentheses, solution. That means that they have less to do. That means they don't have to have any anguished debate over whether we should put boots on the ground or not. A little bit this idea of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? Oh, ISIS is a big problem, so the Shia militias are fighting ISIS, okay, they must be the good guys. But I mean, ultimately, I think that falls within the rubric of a wider lack of British strategy on Iraq, on the Middle East and probably on world politics, because I don't really know what the British government's strategy is, and I don't think they do either. Because essentially they're it's a declining. They should be having a strategy to manage their decline into a middle power, but they don't. So, but I mean,
Thank you.